Okay, hi everyone. Hi Fishbowl. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samantha Legere, and I am here with event host Rachel Serwetz, who is the founder and CEO of career coaching company WOKEN. So this is our first time on Fishbowl, but you can follow us by clicking our profiles to be notified of future conversations. We actually have another event on January 23rd, so stay tuned for that. But today we're going to be talking about what to do if you've been laid off. We will be giving a brief presentation and then we'll be having a Q&A for 15 to 20 minutes towards the end. And so a quick note about this, for this, we'll be welcoming participation from the audience in two ways. As Rachel already said, you can either, one, raise your hand to join the stage. It should be a button in the bottom right corner, and then I will accept you and you can begin speaking. Or you can send me a direct message by clicking on my profile to stay more anonymous. And you can press, I'll press the start chatting button and then your message will be read out to the audience and we'll answer you. Sorry, quick note about this. The Q&A will actually be around like 40-ish minutes just because we really want to hear what you got to say. But yeah, thank you. Let me know if you have any questions about that. So I guess we'll get right into it. So Rachel, first question, what's the very first step you should do if you're laid off or leave a job?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here. And by the way, whether you were laid off or not, this is going to be overall career guidance that is applicable to any transition time that you're in. Excited to be here. So, in terms of the first step, if you leave a job or if you're laid off, what we need to do is actually process what happened. So, I usually recommend people taking, it could be a day, it could be a week before you do any job search stuff. And by the way, if you were laid off a few weeks ago and you haven't done this, it's okay to do it now. But there is a process of grieving and processing and just feeling what you have to feel. And it is uncomfortable. We don't want to have to feel it, but I can guarantee that if you sort of, I don't want to say force yourself, but in a comfortable space, allow yourself to work through the feelings and figure out how to accept and make everything okay. You might need to just journal on it. You might need to have a conversation with someone. You might need to, work through what was in your control, what was out of your control. We want you to literally sort of face everything so that you can revisit the job search with excitement, with readiness, with a sense of positivity. And we cannot ignore that we are human, right? I'm going to get into a lot of tips today about practical stuff, networking, all that jazz. But do not ignore your own self, your mindset, and your feelings because they're going to show up whether consciously or subconsciously. So recognize that there's a way of getting, working through these feelings in a comfortable way and recognize that the worst thing that could happen is that you're going to feel a little uncomfortable, but you are in a safe environment to do it. And it's going to be a game changer so that you can try to reapproach the process when you're ready. And by the way, it may take time to work through this stuff, but if you like literally devote a day or even a week just to this part of the process, it is helpful, and you might surprise yourself what you can do with self-healing and journaling and meditation and maybe a little therapy and coaching and get some friends and peers and mentors and just allow yourself to feel. I know it sounds fluffy, but we cannot ignore that you are a person and your feelings are going to drive your actions. If you start to sit down and do the job search but you're still feeling that, by the way, it's very valid and reasonable that you're going to have mixed emotions, but allow yourself time first to just focus on that and then, move into all the other more practical stuff. I hope that makes sense. Of course, we're going to open it up eventually to Q&A, so don't be afraid. You can ask any and all questions on mindset as well as all the other things, but that is where I recommend you starting if you just left a job.
Yeah, that was a really great answer. Thank you for that. Okay, so now let's get practical. When I'm ready to dive into the work and figure out what my next steps are, where do I start?
Yes. So the first thing you need to do is ask yourself your timeline because the financials are first and foremost, right? We have to take care of yourself. Having a roof over your head is important. So if you sort of feel time crunched, the easiest, quickest way is to find a similar or exact title of a job that you've held previously, but in a different company. That is the quickest and easiest thing to do. If you have a little more time on your side, you might want to do a little bit of exploration before you start applying. And I'm going to explain what exploration is all about. But in an ideal world, you have a period of exploration before you apply so that you can really figure out what's the right role, what's the right industry, what's the right environment. But like I said, if you don't have too much time, you can just dive into sort of sprucing up your branding materials, maybe thinking about a little upskilling as well as job searching. But if you have some time, really, really, really allow yourself to explore and reflect, research, and refine your best fit direction. I can't say enough. Like, I personally went through a job search and people were just pushing me into like the thing they thought I should have. And then I showed up to interviews and I was just trying to like fake it, and they're going to smell that right off of you. The candidate that gets hired is the one that's really genuine and compelling and has done their homework about why that role is a fit for you. This again relates to just your mindset of feeling ready to have those energetic conversations, but also figuring out what role and industry is going to drive that energy so that you can speak with energy during the interview process. So take the time to explore it if you need to. If you're still excited about the role and the industry that you were in, then great. Keep, going and forge forward into the job search process. I'm going to give you a super quick definition of like, what is career exploration? It is a process that is distinct from and a precursor to the job search. So it's a series of steps to learning and reflection in order to compare, contrast, and narrow in on which path or at least which next step you are most confident in pursuing. It's not to say there's only one right role, but the ability to learn and reflect will help you find confidence in which role, which industry, and which environment is the best fit for your next step. That is a period of time that you should stay in until you feel that sense of certainty. And then, of course, you can move forward. It's going to make everything else just so much more efficient and effective, if you start with that process.
Wow, thanks, Rachel. That was really helpful. I actually think I'm going to use that during my next job search, but thank you for that. So the next question is, what is the ideal order of events you suggest and why?
So I kind of alluded to this, but step one is clarify your direction. Do this before you apply anywhere. And by the way, if you've already applied, that's okay. If you realize you need a little clarity on your direction, you can embrace that now. It's okay to take a week or two or three or a month if you have that time on your side to just figure out your best fit direction. From there, that's when you might consider some upskilling. So maybe a course, maybe a certification, maybe a project, maybe pro bono, maybe freelance, maybe there's any number of skill development opportunities. You want to figure out based on your direction what learning opportunity is the most relevant and worthwhile given your ideal direction. That's a moment you can give yourself however much time you need to just figure out what upskilling opportunities are most fitting, again based on your goal. After that, you want to think about your personal branding materials. So I personally like to get all this done before the job search, because during job search mode people just end up editing their resume for like hours on end. So what I like to do is take like a week or two and get your professional summary, get your resume, get your LinkedIn profile optimized, get a cover letter, maybe get a video pitch, maybe get a portfolio, and just strengthen it all, because those are things that just can take forever. But if you confine it, get another pair of eyes on it, get some support, edit, strengthen it in line with your direction. Then once you're in the job search, you can come back to those materials once a week. But you don't want to be sitting with those materials for hours on end during your day. You want your day to be focused on networking, and we're going to get to that later. After you edit your materials, that's when you can really just dive into job search and focus on all the important activities with job search. So those 4 phases are sort of the ideal order of events. It's not always possible, again, based on your timeline. Sometimes you might be exploring your direction simultaneously to job searching. If you don't have the time. That's okay. But ideally, it's clarify direction, decide on upskilling, strengthen all your materials, confine the timeline, get support, and then job search.
Yeah, that was great advice, especially since I myself am considering upskilling. So I think I'm taking advantage of this right now. But next question is, how can I get support through all of these phases? Because we all know it can be difficult sometimes.
Great point. So, this should have been actually our first question, which is after you've done the feeling and the grieving and the processing, decide on what format of support is going to help you. A lot of people, job seekers, like we sort of think we have to go about this alone, but look how many people are in this room. There's so many people job searching, and there's so many people out there, whether it's myself or other career coaches, mentors, peers, so many people to guide and support you, right? So, A, you want to think about like resources. What can you read or listen to or review? Obviously, you're doing it right now, but like blogs, videos, YouTube, whatever it may be, articles, where you can find information in a way that you can digest on your own time. That's sort of the self-paced learning. But just remember, you're learning about your career direction, but you're also learning about how to properly job search to support you. The other type of format of support is people, peers. There's accountability groups, co-working, mentors, career coach, therapists. There's also tools. So you want to ask yourself, like, do I need, do I want a spreadsheet? How am I going to structure my calendar? Do I want some sort of job search software? We have a version of that, and there's other tools out there. Project management. How are you going to stay organized and accountable, and both planning your time as well as organizing the work that you're doing? So in terms of formats of support, we've got resources, we've got people, and we've got tools.
Right. I think you like hit all of the points. I know I definitely take advantage of the tools section. Like honestly, the notes in like the iPhone is my best friend. I write down everything. I write down the time each task is going to take me, and it just makes everything so much more like time efficient. So yeah, thank you for that. So next question, can you outline how to do the career exploration process to clarify your ideal career direction and how long that takes?
Yeah. So this is the interesting thing. Um, the way that we go about career exploration, or the way that I've guided people, it's not rocket science, but we don't necessarily see it all the time recreated in other avenues. So I want to introduce what this process is. A lot of people have examples of this in your life where it may take people years or decades, or they may never clarify their direction. So that's the commonality, that's the common scenario that we see around us. That doesn't mean it has to be that way. So when we typically guide someone through career exploration, it takes about 2 to 3 months to clarify your direction if you put in about 2 to 3 hours a week. If you were to do this as like a full time job of just like clarifying your direction, it could take you about a month. You may also already have some self awareness about what you want. If that's the case, it could take you a week or two. The bottom line is, I'm going to explain how to do the process, but you want to get to the point where you actually feel certain about the role in the industry and the environment that's the best fit for you. And I drive this home because I think people forget that it's actually feasible to get to that point. But if there's a difference amongst roles, and there's a difference amongst industries, you can effectively compare and contrast and say, based on those differences, how do they relate to me, and which one is the best possible fit and why? So if you think that's feasible, then of course this is worthwhile to help you prioritize the direction that you pursue. We want the direction that you pursue, you want to be as confident that it actually is a fit. So it's almost as if you're answering those interview questions before anyone asks it to you. You want to answer those questions honestly for yourself. What role is a fit for you? Why is it a fit for you? Etc. Answer those for yourself authentically, so that when you answer it later to others, it's as compelling and strong as humanly possible. So I'm going to just walk you through in 60 seconds, like, what is the process of career exploration? So the first step is reflecting on 3 different areas. The first is what I call function. The function is essentially the day to day activities, the skills, the projects, the action verbs and phrases. What are you doing all day? What are you natural at? What are you great at? What do you enjoy doing? The second category is essentially problem areas or topic areas that you find important or interesting. What do you find intriguing? and innovative. What products and services really stand out to you personally, as something you want to be a part of and contribute towards. The third is the environment. What should it look and feel like? The people, the vibe, the pace. Is it hybrid, remote? What does it look and feel like? The size, the stage of the company, the intangibles, the values, all of that. Role, industry, environment. Those are the three parts. Okay. From there, you want to come up with options. What are some roles that are relevant to that first section of reflection? What are some industries that are relevant to the second set of reflection? Remember, these are just options. It's okay to be in a period of saying, oh, I'm debating these few different things and I'm figuring out which one's the best for me. If you have options, embrace that. And we're going to teach you how to pursue that. But I just want to sort of drive this point home, because we take a career assessment, it spits out an answer. We expect it to guess our life. That's not possible. So it's okay to say, I've got a few options for roles. I've got a few options for industries. Okay. That's step 2. Step 3 is a little bit of research. We cannot learn everything online, but we want to start by understanding what can we find online about the nature of these roles, how people pursue it, and then same thing with industries. From there, I call it networking, but in essence, it's informational calls, informational meetings. You want to think about who are all the different types of people I can reach out to? How can I get warm connections, alumni, introductions, all that kind of stuff? 2, what am I going to say to them? Don't talk about job search in your outreach. Talk about learning, talking about sharing what you can with them and what you want to learn from them. If you can be specific about what it is you want to learn from them, they're going to be more apt to say, oh, this person is prepared to use my time wisely. It's worth it to get on the phone for 20 minutes. Then you want to run an informational call. Actually, on our website, we have a list of 50 it's a free guide, 50 creative networking questions. You want to really think about how to phrase your questions concretely, creatively, to understand the reality of their day to day. When you go through that process of informational calls, then you want to pivot every single week. What am I liking? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? What do I need to lean in closer? What do I need to get rid of? When you do that process, learn, synthesize, reflect, pivot, that's what's going to allow you to get to the point of saying, okay, this role, this industry, and this environment is the best possible fit for me. So learn accurately and deeply. In a nutshell, that is the process of career exploration. I could go way deeper into that, but I will pause there for right now.
Thanks, Rachel. That was like certainly, I'm sure, very helpful. I know I myself, as you're talking, I can see myself in what you're saying. Like when I do like interview questions and like I try to come up with a response to them, I find myself struggling and I never really consider that maybe it's not the right place. And that really makes sense now. You shouldn't be forcing yourself to really make that connection. So thank you for that. Next question. How should someone think about deciding on upskilling programs or going back to school, deciding on a course, certification, boot camp, and etc.?
Yes. Awesome. And by the way, just to your earlier point, I think on our website, we also have a guide of the reflection questions you can ask yourself after a potential rejection. So to your point, if you interviewed, it is possible it might not be the right place. So you're exactly right to that's how we're thinking about it. Or it could just be you need to practice how to interview. Either avenue might be the case, but it is always important to reflect on, am I in the right interview? Okay. Okay. So when you're thinking about upskilling, again, I've alluded to this a lot, but you want to know what is the role you're going after? What is the role that's a fit for you? I think a lot of people jump into training programs and don't know if they want the role. You can learn so much. I usually get people to the point of 95% or 100% certain about a role without doing any upskilling. You should get yourself to the point of feeling like I understand enough about this role that it feels like, given what I know about myself and given what I learned about the role, it could be a really strong fit. And then upskilling could be used as a bit of a test, a bit of a trial of like, do I like this? But it also really should be used when you're like, sure, here's what I want to pursue, and here's how I have to now go on that journey to learn what I need to learn. During networking, you want to understand, are there requirements for skills and training, or is it just sort of a nice to have? You want to think about the format of a program, the cost of a program, the timeline of the program. Is it reputable? maybe even talking with someone who's done that program before. Is it sort of self-paced? Is it group? Is it individual? Give yourself time. I have a spreadsheet, but create a spreadsheet where it's like, let me just compare and contrast what's out there. There's so many avenues to learn skills. And by the way, some roles, they prefer to see a portfolio, they prefer to see projects under your belt. So maybe you want to do a side gig, whether it's paid or pro bono. Maybe you want to do a self-driven project, or maybe you want to help with some other project. Sometimes serving in like an apprentice, intern, or pro bono capacity could turn into a job, but you just want to be wary of what is the best use of my time to both learn, and then separately, sometimes upskilling is actually really a way of showcasing on your LinkedIn, on your resume, that you are investing in the skills that relate to the role you want. So sometimes it's really good for the personal branding, it's good for pivoting to showcase that, but it's also obviously meant to help you get the experience you need. So that's a tiny bit of food for thought. There's a lot more I can say about sort of upskilling. We can circle back to that if people have questions, but for now, I will pause.
Yeah, that was great. I actually saw some questions start to flood in. Just hold that thought, guys. If you have questions, we're gonna have a whole Q&A portion towards the end, and we'd love to answer it. So just hold on a little longer, okay? Thanks. And so next question is, how do you suggest dividing up your time in a job search?
So this is critical, right? So many people, we want to use the job boards. We want to think they're going to work. They should work because they are the invention of job search. But statistically, the number one way is through networking. We've all heard this time and time again. But what that means is protect your time proactively, at least 50% of your time in job search, however many hours you want to devote. 50% of that time should be networking. That means researching the right warm connections, getting introductions, looking into your alumni, getting the right people. It means drafting some email outreach. Really be thoughtful. You don't have to write a whole cover letter, but write a thoughtful email. And then you're going to start landing these informational calls. And of course, you're going to have to prepare for those calls and have the calls and then follow up. That call is such an amazing opportunity to learn about the target company and see if you even would be a fit there or be interested to work there. It's a great way of learning about your target roles. It's a great way of learning about potential upskilling. It's a great way of introducing yourself and making yourself stand out as a human candidate and not just a piece of paper. And it's an amazing way of uncovering open roles. Statistically, there's a lot of open roles that are not always posted online. So we want to connect with people. Even if they don't have an open role, you can see what other introductions they can make. I just saw an article, actually, it was like yesterday, that there were studies on LinkedIn, and it proved that the best connections were actually loose, indirect connections. So it's not like your best friends. It's who do they know, who does your network know, or who's a warm connection, who's alumni, who's it's sort of this like, we sort of know each other, we're sort of connected, but we don't really know each other, and we can learn something from each other. So you've got to facilitate those calls, and you've got to use that time to actually learn from each other. And that's an amazing way of proving your fit and your knowledge and your skills and your capabilities just by way of what you ask. You can actually prove your fit for a role based on how strategic your questions are. And then you want to see, can they introduce you to the hiring manager, or can they introduce you to the HR recruiter person, or whoever it may be? And how can that one call lead to another call? 50% of time networking, okay? 10, 15, 20% job applications, 5-10% research. Learn about your industry, learn about target companies you didn't know exist, learn about target roles, literally just learning. Separately, 5-10% skill development. By the way, skill development, I know we've talked about this, but for your mindset, to be productive, to be positive, to be creative, doing a hands-on learning project oriented work during the week is a game changer, especially if you are not working. In job search, we tend to think subconsciously, we're like, our brain thinks like we don't have value because we're not being hired right now. But when you're doing that project, you're sort of reminding yourself, like, of course I have skills. Of course I have creative ideas. Of course. And guess what? By choosing that upskilling, you're actually reminding yourself and giving yourself an opportunity to say, what projects do I even want to work on right now? How beautiful is that? And you give yourself something to talk about during the interview process. So we've got networking, online applications, we've got research, we've got skill development. The other thing is events. So virtual or in person, webinars. They could be traditional networking events, or they could just be, webinars where you listen to hiring managers, you listen to panelists, you might meet participants. It's a great way of both learning and networking. The last thing to do in job search is reflecting and measuring. This is both quantitative and qualitative. So measure the numbers. Job search is a funnel. If you're doing outreach but not getting responses, if you're getting responses but no calls, if you're getting calls but no interviews, if you're getting interviews but no offers, figure out the numbers of how you're doing and what it means for what stage of the process of where you need the most support. Qualitatively, you want to think about, where am I hesitating? What's getting in my way? Is it, do I need to get out of the house? Do I need a peer support? Do I need to go on a fun trip and be with friends and have a little more fun in my life? You have to give yourself open-ended time for reflection, just to see, how am I doing? And how can I just improve? Whether that could mean anything. Be open-minded to listen to how you're doing, what's getting in your way, fears, hesitations, and where you could use guidance and support. So that's kind of the rough way of sort of dividing your time. There's a lot more we could talk about with job search, but that's sort of a balance of where to put your time.
Yeah, that was great. Oh my God, more questions are flooding in. So I guess we're gonna do one more question and then we're gonna jump right into the Q&A, guys. So have your questions ready for her. Okay, so last question. What are your 3 keys to success?
Yes. If you are working towards any goal, picture a triangle, and the foundation, picture the triangle is 3 sort of rows. The bottom row is your mindset. Whether subconsciously or consciously, it will impact your actions and your outcomes. Think about when you're stressed, what do? We jump to the job boards. Is that the best mindset to be in when you go do job search? If you're feeling that stress, it's okay, but that means go do a little journaling and meditation and revisit the job search when you're feeling a little bit better. So, mindset, don't ignore it. Get support, get peers, get a coach, get therapist. We are human, we are complex, and when you're going through a transition, it is difficult, and that's okay. But it means that we have to give it its due time. Otherwise, it's going to handle you if we don't handle the mindset. The second rung is accountability. So once your mindset is feeling ready, and by the way, that's a daily goal, is to work on our mindset, but the accountability, putting in the time, being productive. How much time a day can you put in? Are you staying focused? Are you balancing your time? Are you staying organized? That accountability and productivity is inherently, the next step. If we're not putting in the time, the rest doesn't matter. The third top of the triangle is the practical strategy. If your mindset is there and your accountability is there, but all you're doing is applying online, probably not the most strategic approach. So you've got the mindset, you've got the accountability, and then with the practical, you want to really make sure, essentially, that you're using best practices, no matter whatever it is that you're working towards.
All right, that was great. Okay, so I've seen a few hands pop up, and we couldn't answer you right away, but now we're getting into the Q&A portion. So at this point in our discussion, please feel free to either, one, raise your hand to join the stage and we'll accept you so you can speak, or you can send a direct message to myself. We already have one waiting, so I'll just jump right into that. But after, please feel free to raise your hand or send me a question. So the first one is, are you seeing a disproportionate amount of layoffs happening in certain industries than others? And why are those certain industries being impacted more?
Sorry, can you say the first part again? Why are...
Yeah, so it says, are you seeing a disproportionate amount of layoffs happening in certain industries? And why do you think those industries are being impacted more?
Yeah. I think we see it all over. I think it totally depends. In terms of, sometimes these, like, major, like, if we think about financial services, like, they go through layoffs actually usually about like once a year. It's just usually a little more under wraps because it's not as big. But for some of these major big companies, like, I know we all think we want to go work at like Google or whatever, but it's like sometimes majorly big, reputable, large companies actually just have to do these things regularly that you may not even have realized. And then it's based on performance. Sometimes based on the economy, based on a certain industry, based on what's happening. for that company or the market in general, you know, for the health of an organization and for their ability to plan and project what's coming. They have to, you know, make these decisions. So I'm not here as like an economist. I don't really try to like predict the market. I think sometimes we can look at certain roles or certain industries and try to learn from it. But for the sake of a job seeker, I think looking at the news sometimes is just like more scary than it's worth, to be perfectly honest. Bring back your focus onto yourself. And if there's a reason that you have to believe that your role or your industry is like going to be more difficult to job search in right now, then talk with a coach or a mentor or a peer about that and maybe see if you would have to make a change in your direction. But I don't know if it's worth going. I mean, I don't know how much I can say confidently about the market, and I don't know how much it's worth it for a job seeker to worry so much. It's the reality is we're seeing it. It's a combination of the economy as well as just companies having to do the right thing for their health and their future. And um I do think when you're deciding your direction, some small portion of your thought process could be what is the future potential health of this type of role or this type of industry. It's not that you should ignore that altogether, but just realize that the world changes in unpredictable ways, and you never know what role or industry may become more in demand with tomorrow's crazy global market and changes that may happen. So I wouldn't make that factor 100% of your choice when you're thinking about your direction, but it could be an element that you consider as part of a broader set of things.
Right, of course. Thank you so much for answering the question. I think April has another one. So, April, feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. So, quick question. How do you know when your company is trying to push you out? And then if you leave voluntarily, how do you work through those feelings around that?
Yeah. Pushing you out. It's interesting. I actually saw an article on this recently as well. You know, I I don't everyone's different, and I don't want anyone to like get in their head and be like overly worrying about like sometimes we can't predict things, and I'm happy to like give you a few like potential clues to pay attention to, but I also don't want anyone to go overboard necessarily. I think if you're worried for whatever reason, based on whatever you're feeling or seeing at work, the most proactive thing you can do is start thinking about your next steps on the side of your job if you're still working. So rather than, I mean, I'm happy to answer your question, but like if for whatever, you're already asking that. So if anyone in this audience has that feeling, then I would just ask yourself, what can I do on the side that's like the most proactive investment of my time to I don't want to say like get ready, but it's more about whether you were nervous about a layoff or not. There are things you can do by thinking about your direction, strengthening your materials, networking and building relationships. Those things never hurt you anyway. So if you're just like, I just want to be strategic with my career in addition to my job, then I would just think about those activities, which are the best, you know, proactive investment to do on the side of a job. Um, I would say if you notice a change in maybe your manager and how they're treating you and their demeanor, if they're handing you projects or not, if they're taking away projects, things like that might be clues. But it's also okay to have conversations. Ask questions. If you're not sure whether you're overthinking it, this also could just come back to what are the best practices about how to manage up and how to set expectations and how to make sure I'm on track and how to, you know, talk with my manager and things like that. So we can sort of go back to those best practices as well. In terms of managing the feelings of leaving voluntarily, like just look at your financial runway, and if you have time on your side, then it is not bad to leave. If you're in like a really difficult workplace or a toxic situation and you have the runway, um you might want to I actually have a blog on how to make a hard decision. Find 3 people in your life that you really trust and respect, have a conversation, get some support, make sure you're thinking through it just so you're not rash. Maybe, for me, my blog was like a best friend, a therapist, and a coach, or something of that nature. Sort of check your thinking. Maybe it's a partner or something. Well, I will say sometimes friends and family and loved ones may or may not be the best source of career advice. I will just say that. But if you're thinking about voluntarily leaving, just think through it, give yourself time, journal on it, maybe have a conversation with people you respect. And it's all about the runway. If you have runway and you feel like you're in a really bad situation that's actually affecting you, leaving voluntarily is not the worst thing in the world. That's my quickest thoughts. Obviously, there's a lot more we could talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that was great. Thank you so much. We're getting a few more people who would like to ask a question. Next is Vanessa, and after I have another question in queue too. So go ahead.
Oh, Vanessa, I don't think we can hear you. So maybe DM Sam and type out your question, and we could try to figure out the audio. Sam, is there anyone else we want to bring up in the meantime?
Yeah. Okay, so Vanessa, maybe you have to allow Fishbowl to use your mic. So maybe you can check that. In the meantime, we do have another question waiting. So this person says they're in between jobs and
Hello?
feel a sense of. Oh, hi, we hear you now.
Yes, thank you for telling me to enable my mic. My question is, I just want to know Rachel's, how can I connect with you?
Oh
Um,
yeah, thank you.
like your LinkedIn or your
Yeah.
Instagram or your blog. That's
Yes.
all.
Thank you. I love that. And we will share that. I'll share at the end again, but I'm happy to share quickly now. My full name is my LinkedIn. So please find me, follow me. I try to share as much free guidance as often as humanly possible. We also have, of course, we've got our Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Our website is iamwoken.com. We have a lot of free blogs, videos, meditations, event recordings, downloadable guides. I do offer a free initial call as well if you're interested in exploring coaching. But that's pretty much the main ways of finding me. So thank you for that question.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so I have one question waiting in queue, and then Zoe, maybe you can go. But just so I can finish what I was saying before, this person is in between jobs and feels a sense of worthlessness. They got laid off due to cost cutting and are wondering, how do I feel better?
Yes. The feelings are real. And I just, want to start by saying it's okay. However you're feeling is okay and likely a reasonable thing. It is an unfortunate reality that, we leave jobs and sometimes it's unexpected and it often hurts. It's like a breakup. It really is. And it can impact our confidence. I've been there personally. It can be very hard. So I want you to try to think about some of the tactics we've shared today. But thinking about your support system. Get a coach, get a therapist, peers, friends, family. Who, where, how can you garner a community around you, even if it's digital or in person, whatever you can think about, people around you, trying not to feel 100% isolated, because look at all the people in this room. We're all here thinking about our advancement. So you're not alone. That's number one. And find those people and connect with those people at least once a day. Have that connection, even if it means getting out of the house. Think about your physical environment. Think about, going to a coffee shop or a library. That will incite a sense of productivity. I have another blog. You want to think about this period of time as a challenge and an opportunity. It might be one of the hardest things you're going to go through, but we want you to see it as a way of rising to that occasion versus it's just pushing you down and you're going to stay down. It is one of the hardest times someone may have to go through, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get through it. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be new. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to involve learning. It's going to involve testing yourself. It's going to involve resilience, patience, and persistence. It's going to involve asking others for help. This is a time in your life you're going to learn a lot about yourself and about the world. Some people are going to help you and some people are not. So there's a lot of humble things going on, but don't ignore the processing of what happened as a critical element of your healing. There were things in your control and there were things out of your control. Making sense of what happened for the future. Figuring out, based on where you were last, what it is you're looking for in your next role. Thinking about this as an opportunity. What was good about that place that you want to recreate? What was bad that you want to avoid? This is an opportunity for something new and bigger and better. So always looking forward and remembering that just because you're not currently working does not mean you don't have skills, strengths, and value. So really explore what is a project or some learning based thing, whether it's a course, a certification, a boot camp, a program. Don't just like rash apply to grad school. Is a very big, expensive thing, and that's a whole other topic. But some skill oriented thing where you can actually be creative, be productive, and remind yourself of all the wonderful value professionally that you can give to the world and that you have given to the world. Sometimes, even just editing the resume, people will be like, oh my goodness, did I do all this? So go through what you've done in your past, talk about it, meet with others to be able to tell your story in a positive way. And know that just because you're in between doesn't mean you're anything less than you were before. You're just in between. You're just ready for the next. Doesn't mean you're less, right? It means that we're ready for something new. There's so much I could say. I hear you. I see you. My heart is with you. This is why I devote my life to this. You're gonna be okay. And just if you ever need to, just remind yourself, like, I am safe. I have a roof over my head. I have people around me. I'm going to be okay. This is a challenge, but I'm capable of handling this challenge, and I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to grow from it, and I'm going to be stronger from it. I hope that helps. But yeah, Zoe, feel free to hit us with your next question.
Hi, that was very helpful. Thank you, Rachel. I have a question around fighting PEPs and PIPs. If you know that you're going to be part of a mass layoff and you're going to get like a PIP that's unachievable, but you want to try and fight it, is it worth trying to fight it? Do you have any tactics there, especially if you work at a big company and you're one of many?
Fighting it meaning like trying to sort of negotiate an opportunity to stay and where you can stay and add value type thing?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, not
Good question. Good question. I would say the opportunity or the conversation around potentially continuing in a freelance or part-time or contract capacity is it never hurts to ask. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is if they're letting multiple people go and there's critical processes that have to be continued, is there a new or different role? Sometimes things change altogether when a lot of people leave. Like perhaps there's a new process that has to get started or things that have to continue. Just because everyone's leaving, you know, it never hurts to sort of think about what is critical on the team and who's going to do that and offering your help. I mean, you might be surprised. Sometimes you could even offer, so there's contract, there's part-time, there's freelance, and that could be in an ongoing, like a few hours a week. Or you could say, well, for, a month, I could do this and sort of create a handoff plan or make sure I document the procedures, or like maybe it's sort of like a time fixed project that has to get wrapped up, right? So that's another way of doing it. Sometimes the decision makers are, it's possible it's your manager's manager, or like depending on your level. So sometimes you just want to be creative with sort of who exactly is the right stakeholder with the decision making power, so to speak. Those are my few initial thoughts. I'm sure there's probably more. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you were to be offered severance over a performance improvement plan,
what
would you
pick? Yes, understood. Yeah. So performance improvement plan, I know your acronym now, is for someone who, if they're needing to work on some feedback or goals or meet some sort of expectations or they may sort of be let go. That's a PIP. If you wanted to negotiate a severance instead of that, that's a good question. I think, again, you want to ask yourself, who is the right stakeholder? Sometimes it's your manager, sometimes it's your manager's manager. And to be honest, I don't know of too many ways to go about that without just being upfront about it. So if whoever the right decision maker is, I mean, if that's an idea on your mind, and you think it might be the best for everyone and you would be happy for that to happen and you think they might align, I would just ask yourself, like, who's the decision maker, and am I gonna sort of try to go have this open conversation? I mean, other than posing it as an option and a question, not sure many other ways to really put it on the table. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a lot of questions, so hopefully you can just answer it really quickly. And if not, we're so sorry we can't get to them, but we still have about like 13 minutes. So just to get right into the next one, we have a question that says, how do you stand out when interviewing for sales positions? And do you have any best practices? After that, Ray, you're free to ask your question.
Okay. Stand out in an interview. I mean, I know the question was about sales, but let's just talk about standing out in an interview. When you do career exploration independently before you apply anywhere, you are essentially asking yourself, what is my answer to the interview questions? Make sure you have an honest, authentic answer. And if you don't, go back to the drawing board to literally just make sure you have an answer to the questions yourself. If the questions are not honest and believable and compelling, they're not going to feel confident to put you in that role. So it's a combination of, have you done this thing before, and can you clearly showcase the metrics and the proof of how and when and where you've done these different skills and responsibilities before, but also, is the interest and motivations and alignment there? And of course, is the culture fit there with our company? The key to interviews is A, like, get that honest clarity up front, and then B, practice. Now, when you practice, you're not really trying to memorize, but you're just trying to get comfortable with, how can I pause before I speak? How can I organize my thoughts into a few key areas? How can I be concise and yet comprehensive and clear and specific? How can I speak for just 1 or 2 minutes at a time? How that's what you're trying to practice, is getting comfortable with the mode. Like, interviews are just like a different style of communication than typical conversations. So you just want to get comfortable with that. It's not about memorizing, but it's about being really thoughtful about what are the actual best answers to these questions, which these require self-reflection. Asking, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? You have to literally answer that honestly for yourself. And if you're not sure what the answer is, work with a coach, work with a mentor, work with a peer to actually figure out the honest answers. And then you want to figure out how to phrase it well. And then, of course, you want to practice to get comfortable with how to speak in, 60, 90, or however many seconds. Using metrics, using stories, using proof, being as relevant to what it is they're looking for, obviously, and showcasing your relevant experience. I know it sounds obvious, but they want to know that you understand this role enough and can operate independently, that you're considering all the key factors and elements and criteria that someone would have to think about in this role. You would know where to get resources, you would know who to ask, you understand generally the tools and the processes. They want to trust that you can operate independently, even if that means knowing how to learn and who to ask. That's my quickest thoughts on how to stand out. There's so much more we can talk about with interviews. I'll pause there.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Rachel. I had a quick question about upcoming graduates from college. My question is, what is your stance on graduates joining a company as an intern to get their foot in the door compared to applying versus all the other open positions for full-time roles?
Well, I think you might know the answer to this, but if you were to get an internship somewhere, way more likely that you're going to go get hired there full time than if you don't. But that being said, I'll give you an example. I did an intern at Goldman Sachs and I started my job. That was my first job. So is it possible to not have an internship and go get hired there? Yes. Did Goldman visit the campus that I was on? Yes. So there are ways, but you'd really have to network. So it is obviously easier or preferable if you can get an internship somewhere that you think you want to work to increase the odds of getting hired there full time. If I think I'm answering your question, but let me know if I'm missing something.
It would be a graduating senior.
Oh, okay. So I see. Are you asking like should you intern there like after you graduate?
Yes. Considering the work layoffs and everything happening with the industry.
I see. If they're open to that, if you see open internships and you're still eligible in their requirements, it doesn't hurt to apply. But you'd want to understand, obviously, internships are usually a time-based, maybe over the winter, maybe over the summer. So if you happen to see, like, just want to make sure the timing aligns and the eligibility aligns. But this is one of those interesting questions where whenever you're networking, you want to ask, say there's like 2 or 3 or 4 professionals in the industry you're looking at, to sort of ask them that question. Because this may change. They may open up the eligibility or they may not. So whether you're eligible and whether they would even consider you and whether they would prefer you or not, and sort of when the timing of those internships are happening, that's a lot of learning. So learn from people in those roles in those companies and just make sure you have the under the hood information from them. I would sort of get their take on it based on what their company's actually doing. And I would just be wary of like, are you going to spend what percent of your time seeking internships versus full time? To be honest, I don't want to say like a blanket statement. Yes, despite all the layoffs, but I think getting a entry level role full time is I don't want to say one of the easier things to do. It's not necessarily true, but I probably wouldn't spend like 100% of your time just seeking internships, but I would just learn from the professionals. If you're gung ho on a certain role or industry, just make sure you're learning from those people who can tell you like how their company is currently hiring and thinking about new grads.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ray. Okay, so we're getting down to, it looks like the last 6 minutes. So we're going to try to answer one more question. But just so that we have time, Rachel, where can people find you or connect with you? And then we'll get right into that question.
Yes. So my LinkedIn, I'm pretty active there, right? So Rachel Serwetz on LinkedIn. And then we have on Instagram, we are Get Woken. On LinkedIn, we're just Woken. So you can find us either with the Get Woken handle or Woken, TikTok, IG, LinkedIn. And then our website is iamwoken.com. Lots of free resources there. Yeah, stay tuned. We offer a lot of free upcoming events. We'll be on Fishbowl again in January, and we also have webinars in lots of other places. We also list our past event recordings on our website. Sam, let me know if I'm missing anything.
Yeah, you covered a lot. Definitely, I would drive home the LinkedIn. She always posts like blogs, videos, everything on there. So it's really helpful. Okay, so just to get to that last question real quick, it says, what are the pros and cons of being laid off versus quitting, especially in the eyes of recruiters? Would it be in someone's best interest to stay as long as possible, even if they feel they could be laid off? This is assuming they can afford to leave.
Wow. Okay. Pros and cons. So like severance, right, is one thing. But if you're not, if you can afford to leave, I would think about like how bad is the current situation, and do you want to have your full week available to you to look for new and better things? If it's not that bad, you could just look for things on the side of your job. In terms of the conversation with recruiters, it really depends on the purpose of the layoff. Like if the layoff was due to restructuring, like that's something that everyone is understanding of right now. If it's a performance related thing, it's not impossible to talk about that, but obviously not as great to have to find a way of talking about that. And yeah, I would say with quitting, if you're ever talking about why you left and the decision was to quit, as long as there's some reasonable, rational reason, they want to understand sort of why you left. And like, if you knew that you wanted to go in a new direction, or if you knew that the culture really was not supportive, or if there's some reasonable reason of why you're leaving, usually a rational person will understand that in a future interview. So if you need another perspective on this, like get a coach, get a peer, get a mentor to like hear you out. But when you're walking someone through their journey, they just want to your journey. You just want to make sure that you're making not rash decisions, you're making logical decisions, and that when you go tell your story, that it will make sense to someone. There's probably a lot more we could talk about in terms of like having to decide between all of that, but I hope that was a little bit helpful. I know there's a lot of considerations with decisions like this.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that. So we have about 3 minutes left. I'm not sure we can squeeze in another question. I don't know, Rachel, that's up to you. But if not, this is basically the end of our discussion. Thank you all for joining. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow us on Fishbowl and click our profile so be notified of future events. But up to that, Rachel, it's your floor. Would you like another question or time to leave?
I think for the sake of time, I'm going to say so long for now. But thank you guys for joining. I hope this was helpful. Reach out, stay connected. I'm here to help. I know this is a lot. Any change, any transition is a lot. Know that there's people here to support you. And just find those people, right? When it gets hard, remember you're not alone, and just go find those support, the resources, and the people around you to get you through this period of time. And just remember, it's a challenge and it's an opportunity. It's you don't have to, even though you feel down, you don't have to stay down. So it's a daily challenge to pick ourselves back up, and it's a moment in your life that you will grow from. So know that people are here and understanding of what you're feeling, what you're going through, and you will get to the other side. You've got to, have that future focused mindset. It's a daily sort of daily experience to pick yourself up, but always reflect and pivot. If something's not serving you, see how you can adjust it, right? And it's you're showing up to your job search as if it were your job, right? This isn't work, but it's self-work. So try to give yourself the care that you would if you were being paid to do job search. All right. And stay in touch, follow us. We'll be back for more. I hope this was helpful, and take care, guys.
Definitely, right on time, 3 p.m. So thank you again, guys. Follow her on LinkedIn, and we'll see you at the January 23rd event. Thanks. And thank you to Rachel for helping us plan this
You're
whole
welcome.
moderation.
All right.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.